What's going on, chess friends? It's Rafi Chowdhury here, and in today's video, I am playing a 15-minute game here on Lichess. And looks like our opponent is playing some sort of a Dutch-ish related defense. So we are going to continue just developing our pieces and get castled. He's probably going to play d5 here in just a minute here. So plays d5, we take, he takes, we take, he takes. We can't take because the queen would be on us in that position. So we're gonna have to play this kind of move, just immediately attacking the pawn on e5 and making him play d6, which is what he did. Could have also pushed, I guess. He can still push, but we can stop that with d3 if we want to. But I'm gonna go ahead and get castled up. Pushes e5, we play knight d2, and if he pushes again, we can play knight to c2, which is a good spot for our knight because it helps to protect the b4 expansion, because eventually we'll play a3, rook b1, b4, b5, and start pushing on the queen side because our pawn chain will soon be will be directing towards the queen side. So yeah, that's the idea, and he just plays bishop e7. So I'm thinking maybe d3 now. We could play maybe like rook to b1 now. Idea is to play a3, b4, and b5. Plays h6. He probably wants to play g6 or g5. I mean, he wants to go all in on the king side with an attack. Okay, let's launch our queenside attack. Plays bishop to e6. He wanted to prevent the knight g5 idea. Okay. That's okay with us. Let's continue our attack with now a4 and then b5. Let's go ahead and push through with b5. We're playing knight e1 next move, I think. Or even knight h5. But he can play king to h7, then he's taking away the square from us, and our knight kind of looks a little silly on that square, to be completely honest with you. So now that he's done this, actually we have some control over these light squares. So let's see if we can take advantage of some of that. Play knight e1 first. Idea is to play knight to here, knight to here, knight to here. And to play a6 and a5 and a6, and also hitting the pawn on b7 with the bishop. So he defends. Now is a good time to play knight to c2, followed by knight to e3, and that goes into d5. He can stop this by playing f4, but right now, immediately, we cannot. He'll end up losing a pawn. He will shatter the pawn structure, but still a pawn. So at the moment, we might be discouraging him from playing this f5. His knight here is really doesn't have much to do. If we can pop this knight into d5, I think our position will feel very solid. So he plays king h7. He's probably planning to play some sort of g5 soon. So yeah, in these kind of positions, when it's kind of like opposite side attacking chances, a lot of times it's a good idea to play like Karpov, where you kind of like go and win on this side of the board, and then all of a sudden you switch back up and you start winning on this side of the board as well. So you're kind of winning in every part of the board basically. It's a very strong and solid strategy to not just focus on one side of the board, but once you've thoroughly optimized, and gotten your pieces to the best possible squares and gotten the best pawn structure and space and things like that, you start shifting your idea and strategy and start focusing on trying to win on the other side of the board, which is kind of how Karpov played chess. So I really want to play a4 and a6 at some point. Maybe not immediately, but at some point soon. And I want to start attacking on the queen side, king side as well. So I'm considering moves like f4, but I think that move is kind of weakening right now. Or maybe not. It's not so weakening actually. I think f4 is not a bad move to play now. Let's go ahead and play it. Our pieces are all in good squares right now to go ahead and to continue developing and starting to make this king feel a little bit uneasy, given that he's pushed these pawns a lot, especially if he plays g5. The bishop is probably well placed on c1 because it's kind of pointing towards the king side. So I don't want to interfere with that diagonal much right now. Let's go ahead and keep the bishop on the d2 square. So we have some ideas of the bishop also guarding this diagonal. So he's going to really pile up on this f file, I can tell. Let's go ahead and create this threat of queen taking here and taking here. So he defends. Let's try to push to a5, possibly. We can try to go with a5 now and see if we can push through. Now with bishop g7, we do have to be careful about this diagonal now. We might have already gotten ourselves into some trouble here. I think after bishop takes d5, we're hitting his rook on f7. So this whole tactic with taking here and taking this, I don't think will work properly because we'll take the rook for free. But we had to be definitely careful there because, I totally missed that idea actually. Just totally forgot that bishop on g7 now all of a sudden starts attacking our rook on the a1 square. So we need to put the rook on a2 next move, I think. So yeah, he sees that this tactic that he was going for doesn't work because of the rook on f7 hanging. So yeah, what will he do now? He might play b6. No, he probably won't play that kind of move. He'll probably play, oh, e4. Interesting. I feel like we need to definitely get this rook out of the way at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and invest in this move, rook to a2. Or should I take here first and then play that? Yeah, that makes the most logical sense to play this first. We can actually play bishop c3 now and offer an exchange of bishops. Oh, he doesn't allow that. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Definitely there's a lot of logic behind not allowing that. So now might be a good time to transfer our bishop over to this diagonal. So we do have the bishop pair advantage here, and I think that will give us some good solid chances once the position starts opening up a little bit more, if it does, which is what we will aim for in the near future. So if he takes here, we're obviously taking back, keeping his knight out of e4 square. He still has knight g4 ideas, so that's something we have to be careful about. Yeah, thinking a rook lift might not be a bad idea at this point. Rook lift to a2 square. a2 followed by maybe something like rook d2 at some point. Just getting the rook out of this bishop's diagonal and out of the way. Maybe there's some subtle threats now of taking here and taking here and winning a pawn. So bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, d takes e4, f takes e4, bishop takes e4. Would definitely win us a pawn. So that is kind of the threat right now. So I'm expecting him to probably play rook to d8, or sorry, e8, protecting this e4 pawn. Perhaps he might take on d3. It's also an option. Most likely he'll play rook e8. It's the most logical looking move here. Or he'll take on d3 and then play rook e8. So yeah, he did play rook e8 here. So he wants to take, and then take over this e file. Okay. I do want to put some pressure on this diagonal, so I might actually play queen to b2 here. Or should I play queen to a1? Keeping in touch with the f1 rook. Probably queen a1 looks a little bit more natural here. So yeah, I was expecting him to take advantage of these dark squares here, where I have the weaknesses. Trying to think about how I can keep the knight from getting into e3. I don't think we can prevent him from getting into e3, to be honest with you. Where to put the rook is the question. Probably on c3. Trying to keep everything as protected by pieces as possible. Knight e3, I'm planning bishop h1. Puts his knight on a great square, but I don't have much of an option here because I don't think we can keep him out of e3 quite easily. My idea is actually to take here, actually, next move. I couldn't do it last move because he had in between move knight e3, hitting the rook and the bishop, and once I move the rook, he would have captured the bishop and then taken back on this square with his rook. But now I'm taking here, and he can't take back with the rook. He has to take with this pawn, which is what we will do now. So I don't want him to open that e-file. So he does take back, okay. Maybe take, and then play queen to c3 might be an option. Just trying to guard some of these dark squares. Might be not a bad idea here. I like this queen to be as centrally placed now as possible. If he does ever push this, he's opening up our bishop. So that'll probably help us. Now we got the rook out of the off the f file also, so this g5 isn't. He can still play g5, I guess, if he wants to. If we can trade down to an endgame, I'll have some advantage because my two pass pawns here. The queenside pawns will be further advanced than black's queenside pawns. So I'm thinking about how I can trade off all the pieces now and have the space advantage to work with. Thinking about also switching the rooks over to this d file. So yeah, he starts breaking things up on this side and immediately, which is what he should be doing in this position, I think. Could take that. That leaves this e-pawn really vulnerable. If I play e3 and take back with the e-pawn, that leaves this to be a pass pawn. So if I play h3, where is his knight going to go? On f6, right? Yeah, that's the only square he has for the knight. I'm wondering if I can just play h3, f5, stuff like that. Hmm. Do I trade? Or do I play h3 and try to advance? Let's trade, just to keep the position a little bit more simple. Kind of hesitant about moving these pawns in front of the king too much. Almost always leads to disaster. So with this queen lining up now, I mean, these dark square weaknesses are starting to feel a lot more scarier. Wish I could attack e4 somehow with another piece. Let's let's do some third rank defense here. Try to guard the e3 square some more. That's the biggest weak point right now in the position, I feel like. So he has taken over that file also. So let's now use this time to attack his d6 pawn. That's weak. If he plays rook f2 or knight f2, I think I can just take the pawn on d6. If he takes on g2, I take back with the king. He doesn't have knight e3 still. I'm thinking about queen d2 also to try to trade off the queens to make this position a little bit more, try to get rid of some of this attack that he has and just maintain my pawn structure advantage. My far advanced queenside pawns, I feel like, is a pretty good advantage here. Also, this e4 is really a weak pawn. Far advanced, no support for it. So yeah, those are the main things I'm looking for right now. Queen d2 would also hit d6, so yeah. Maybe queen d2 now anyway, playing queen d5 next move. I'll have to watch out for knight e3. If queen d5, then takes and knight e3 is really annoying. But I am offering him a queen trade. If he takes the queen, I think I will have an advantage because of his weak pawns on d6 that I can quickly gang up on. Although he does have take and then knight e3, hitting my bishop and the pawn on c4. Oh no, he doesn't have knight e3. What am I saying? Rook is protecting e3 square. Yeah, I had a feeling that move was coming. And now might be a good time to play this move. Hmm. Now I'm going to go ahead and start penetrating onto the f file as much as possible. If he takes, I'll go ahead and pre-move this capture. If he plays rook f6, then I'm going to take on e4 with the queen. I'm hoping he goes below a minute so we can really start playing some bullet chess with him. If he doesn't take my rook, then I'm playing rook to a1 and rook to f1. A to f1. Or I can even play maybe queen d5. No, I can't play queen d5. Oh, interesting move. I have a feeling I should probably take this guy. If I give it check now, scoots back. Probably you should play it safe with this move. Now bishop d5 is a threat. Winning the exchange. Bishop f3 is probably coming soon for me. Let's play this bishop f3. Trying to solidify all the points in my position. Maybe here now. Probably here. Now I'm threatening e3 also. Taking on e3, so we're up a pawn now. Oh, he just dropped his queen. It's crazy. Wow. Well, that was kind of a very fun game. Yeah, let's analyze it and let's see what we could have done better. I had a feeling he was going to do that queen move, by the way, because when he played that, I thought he was doing that to attack that, and I think he totally missed this queen. He was trying to get even on material. That's actually not the right approach to think in chess. Especially in low time controls, you want to just focus on having a lot of piece activity instead of being material greedy. He was just thinking, oh, if I drop a pawn here, I'm going to try to get this pawn. This pawn is not as important as this pawn. Dropping this pawn is already a pretty big mistake, and even if you get that pawn for it in this kind of position when the king is safe, didn't make any sense for him to divert his queen to this direction when all the activity is happening in this side of the board. His king is here, all my pieces are pointing this direction. So to bring his most defensive piece, the queen, the one that guards the most squares around the king, toward the side of the board, just to grab a pawn is just already a very bad way of thinking. So even if this did maintain material, equality and did not drop the queen, just the principle behind this move, I think, is just not the right approach. So yeah, let's got the opening books and things like that in place. Notation. Let's turn on infinite analysis so we can see what we could have done better. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at this game. So I played the c4. This is the English opening, of course. It's a standard opening, been played by thousands of players, hundreds of thousands of players over thousands of years, probably not thousands, hundreds of years. So e5 is typically the most common reply. I played g3. Idea is to pin Cato the bishop, and then my next move here was g3, and fianchettoing the bishop. He plays f5, which is kind of like the Dutch style way of playing against the English. I play bishop g2, played knight to f6, developing pieces. I played knight to c3. He played the move c6, the idea of playing d5. I don't know if this is the best approach to this opening, but you know, so that's what he chose. So I played knight c3 here, and apparently that's gets me out of book. I wonder why, because knight c3 is knight f3 is a very common move in these positions. But anyway, in any case, computer doesn't think it's a losing move or anything. Pretty equal. He can push e4, and I thought about this move. I thought he would maybe play to pawn to here, but I can play knight to d4. You can get in d5, and I guess this position might be slightly. I don't know. It's not bad. Black does, excuse me, have some really good advanced pawns, but I think white is doing okay here. d6 castles, knight bishop d7, d3, stopping this whole e4 idea now. What did he do next? He castled as well. Now, okay, it's not typical idea in the English opening is to try to push on the queen side to try to get some queen side expansion going on. So typically, white starts that plan with rook to b1 and followed by b4, a3, a3, b4, or even b4, a4, a5, b5, a6. It's typically the approach there. So rook b1 was played by me. An opponent played the move h6, and initially I thought maybe h6 was played to support a g5 advance, which is possible. A lot of times in this opening, people play queen to e8, queen h5, g6, h6, g5, g4, h4, things like that. That's what I was thinking his approach might be, but he actually played this move, I think, to stop me from playing bishop to g5, because he wants to put his bishop on e6. So after h6, I could have thought about trying to take advantage of these holes that he made, but I think after king h7, just didn't see what my knight is doing on h5 really, h4. So I did not play this move. And instead chose to play just straightforward b4. Where's the computer analysis? There we go. Yeah, bishop e6 was played. So I did not hesitate to slow down or anything like that. I just continued with. So now we're back into book. Actually, there's a game between two looks like international masters from this particular position. So after b4, he played e6, bishop e6, and computer is suggesting straightforward b5. I chose to prepare the b5 move a little bit more with a4 first. So it's an inaccuracy. b5 was better right away. Okay. Yeah, I guess I can see why after b5, if c takes b, for example, I can take back with the rook or the knight and have a pretty good outpost. But again, I don't know if a5 is necessarily like a bad move, losing move or anything either. Knight to d7, developing his last remaining minor piece. Go ahead and played b5 anyway. And according to the computer, c5 was a blunder. I don't know exactly why it's a blunder. Let's look at it though. So now knight h4 is really strong apparently, and I can see why, because knight h4 I missed it. Knight h4 threatens knight to g6, forking the bishop and the knight, and also threatens to take on b7. So if he protects b7, say with rook b8, I'm going to g6, and after rook e8, I can chop off this bishop on e7. Although I don't know if I would do that personally, because this bishop, I mean, look at it, it's not really doing a whole lot. Computer lied. This being suggested actually is allowing this pawn capture on b7. I wonder why. It's wanting me to play rook e8. What if I play rook b8? Does he want me to play knight to g6? And if he plays rook here? I guess because it's just a good spot for the knight? I don't know. So f4. What about king h7? No. Takes. Takes. Knight back into h4. This opens up some possibilities on the king side with these holes and takes advantage of them. I guess this is a good position for white. Yeah, I like it. Well, I didn't see quite knight h4. I mean, I saw it, but I didn't really consider it too much. I just went ahead and played knight e8, knight e1 right away. It's a more natural looking move in this position. The idea is to, again, transfer this knight over to the queen side and then back over to the king side and to the center. So the computer likes also my idea of knight c2. So it suggests knight c2, which is what we played. And he plays king to h7. And it continues to like my idea with the knight. So it suggests knight to e3 as one of the top choices. So I play knight e3. He continued now with, I believe, rook to b8. Oh wow, what an idea! Bishop to h3, hitting the pawn on f5. That's an interesting idea. I didn't really consider that too much. Cool idea. It likes the one knight on e3 to keep attacking the f5 and to keep an eye on d5, but it does not like the idea of putting the knight on d5. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I put the knight on d5. And according to the computer, I lost most of my advantage after that. I think it's because it allows him to just trade pieces and make his position a lot less congested. When you're really in a cramped position, you want to go ahead and trade some pieces, which will allow you to you'll feel a little bit less cramped. So then he played queen to d8. Although the computer suggested just taking the knight on d5. Plays queen to d8. I played f4 here. Not Fritz. Stockfish does find f4 as an idea, but it prefers e4. I see. Which makes sense, putting another pawn in the center and challenging his advanced pawn on f5, trying to open up the diagonal to his king. Makes logical sense. In the meantime, it's still hard for him to push through with f4 because I'm defending f4 so well with multiple pieces. But I like my move also, f4. Just putting some more pressure on the e5 pawn, opening up, the f file potentially, things like that. She plays g6, which I don't like too much. I don't see the point of g6 because f5 is not really being attacked. So I don't know why g6. I played now bishop to d2. The idea is to just put the bishop on a diagonal, keeping on the same diagonal here, but also letting it have some influence on this diagonal and lining up the queen behind it to start putting some pressure and creating some threats on the king side here. Just kind of the idea of the bishop d2 move. But computer prefers to just go ahead and play e4 and f4 and try to strike at the center. But I kind of liked my structure here a little, the pawn structure here, so I didn't want to change that immediately. So that's why I was maneuvering the pieces to their best squares before I started striking in the center some more. And genuinely speaking, I think bishop on d2 is a little bit better than bishop on c1. Plays rook to f7. He's still, computer is suggesting that he trades some pieces off here, but he didn't do that. So here I played queen to c1. The idea of exchanging on e5 and taking the pawn on h6. And he sees that right away, so he plays bishop to f8. Now I played rook to a1 with the idea of pushing through with a5. Plays bishop to g7. I went ahead and played a5. Took the knight. Strong knight in the center, so makes sense to take it with the bishop. Took back with my knight. Pushed this, but the other option was for him to take on f4. That's interesting. Okay. So here I took the knight with check. He took back with his knight. And computer line shows to take on e4. Knight takes e4, bishop takes f takes e4. I don't know if I like that idea so much. Taking on e4 right away, I'm not sure. Especially given that my rook is on the diagonal lined up with his bishop. I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of that. So I played a more practical and safer move, which is to go ahead and get a piece on that diagonal. And I don't know if the computer likes this move so much, but that's what I did. Played queen to c7. Taking on e3, d3 was definitely an option for him. Queen to c7, which again, queen to e7 was obviously a better move, I think, because it puts the queen on a file that's soon to be opened or could be opened at any point. Queen on c7 really isn't doing much at all. I don't know what it's doing at all. Maybe he didn't like the idea of maybe my rook's coming onto the e file and threatening his queen at some point. He would have probably liked the position if it was rook on e7 with queen on e8. I think he would have preferred that more, but a lot of people don't like to put the queen in front of the rook when taking over a file, and that makes sense because I could easily attack that queen. So I played rook to a2. The idea is obviously to get the rook off the diagonal with the bishop. Then he played rook to e8, just taking over the e file. Computer again prefers the idea of exchanging some minor pieces and then starting to, giving him a pawn on e4 by exchanging on e4 and then trying to attack that d6 pawn. That's kind of backwards. Not sure. I just wanted to continue to put pressure and not strike right away. I like the whole slowly constricting my opponent type of approach to chess instead of just going all in and just crashing through. So I like to just kind of build my position up to where all my pieces are perfectly placed and then slowly start pushing for small advantages on both sides of the board. So I played queen to a1, putting some pressure on this diagonal. And now he could have played d5, actually. That's probably why computer does not like this move at all. Because when he plays d5, I can definitely have some... I could see some problems in my position. Instead, he chose, excuse me, knight to d4. And here, I think I played rook to c1, if I'm not mistaken. D takes e4 was suggested, but he can play knight e3 though in that line and pick up my... I think if he plays knight e3, I can just ignore it, play e takes f5, and he takes on takes my rook, then I can take on g6 with check, then follow it up with taking the knight. And I will have gotten 2 pawns for the exchange, and that would be enough compensation. And I will have messed up his king side completely by taking all the pawns on the king side. But I chose to go with rook to c1. Plays queen to e7. D takes e4, knight e3, okay. So now I took on e4. And wow, a6 is being suggested in this position. Crazy. Well, he took. And then I took the bishop. He took back with his rook. Then I brought my queen to the best square that I could find for the queen. So queen to c3, eyeing the e3 square and centralizing the queen also. So he goes ahead and plays g5, which wasn't an inaccuracy, but in the game, during the game, I thought that was a great move, honestly. But I don't know why it's an inaccuracy. It's suggesting e3 as an option. Why? What if he takes this? Really? Along this passed pawn? Computer likes this? Wow. Why does this computer like this for white? I'm not really sure because this looks kind of dangerous. Maybe I have enough power to just stop this in its place. And I can play bishop to f3 and stop it again. I don't know if I like this so much. Along with kind of dangerous pass pawn and then game like that, far advanced. After g5, I actually chose to take on g5. Took with his queen. And here I thought his position was not bad at all. Like I feel like he was definitely kind of starting to bring his pieces towards me. But he definitely had some long-term positional weaknesses for sure. Like dynamically, he is doing okay because his pieces are quite near my king lined up, and he's controlling some crucial squares. But long-term, though, he has a weakness on d6. He's really back, far not advanced pawns on the A and B files. Mine are far advanced. E4 is a little bit too far advanced. Imagine if all the pieces came off the board. This king and pawn in game would be very easily winning for me, honestly. So yeah, I played this rook a3 because I wanted to give some third rank defense to this e3 square, and also just preemptively, kind of keeping an eye on g3 as well, since he's lining up his pieces this way and he has potential to attack again. I was really worried about these squares right here, mainly these three right here. All of these were so weak. These dark squares were really a big weakness for me. But after rook a3, I'm just holding everything very well in place. So it's not that easy for him to crack this position either. So computer says this is dead even position right now. So after rook f7, I chose to play rook to d1. Now starting to put some pressure on the d6 square and also getting the rook out of the attack from the queen. So my queen can be free to move around. That's also a practical thing to do, is whenever your pieces are being attacked, you want to have defenders, but if the defender means that you're tying up a really big piece, like my queen doesn't want to be tied down to defending the rook on c1. That really limits what the queen is capable of doing, right? So that's why I moved this rook out of the danger zone and into a square where it has much greater influence and is now attacking a weakness in my enemy's camp as well. So he plays rook to e6, defending that weakness and preparing to maybe double up on the f-file. So his rook on f6 does a really good job of not only defending d6 but also eyeing this f-file. So I thought that was his idea probably. And kind of interferes with the queen. Also, my queen's diagonal is a little bit cut off. So yeah, and he also has the option of offering me a queen trade. So queen d2 is what I played. It was a mistake apparently. Could have played h3. Thought about it. No, I did not think about h3 in this position actually. With this queen being here, that kind of looks really scary. Queen d2 offers a queen trade. I thought he could probably push this, but I thought maybe if he does push that, he's really making e3 kind of a target to some extent, and I'm just now grabbing all these light squares and could potentially attacking one of these light squares. So he plays queen f5, and I played rook to f1 right away, challenging the queen and the rook on this file. He puts the queen on g6. And I thought about trading, but then again, I can see that he can get his queen here and try to bring the queen here. So I thought instead I would just play here. And the idea being that if he catches on f4, I would catch it with my queen. And if he pushes, which is what he did, now I thought I could take with check and then bring my queen back for defense. Of f2. Apparently his best move here was to go ahead and offer a queen trade and get the pawn on f to f2. I'd imagine queen f2, king f2, e takes f2, check, king f1. It's definitely an idea that I did not consider during the game. He gets his rook involved instead, and wow, here he doesn't. Oh, okay, I see what's going on here. So yeah, here bishop f3 is what I thought, and I played in the game thinking that I can just plug this f-file up because he's trying to line up all his pieces there. So I just played bishop f3, and yeah, he definitely had some attack actually. He could have done. He played queen h5, hitting h2, but I guess I could play h4 and then play king to g1, g2. Oh, he could have taken on c4. I didn't even consider that move. Wow. Yeah, definitely didn't see queen takes c4. Instead, he chose to play this move, knight e5, and now I played bishop d5, hitting the queen and protecting c4. Brought his queen to c7, and I had a feeling he brought it here probably to attack this guy. Totally missing the fact that my queen is on e1 hitting that. Maybe subconsciously he thought, such low being so low on time, that somehow the queen would take on e3 maybe. That would leave this a5 pawn hanging. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of like how he could have made this kind of mistake with given the time pressure. So in his mind, he might have thought that, oh, okay, well, I'm about to lose this pawn. But maybe he overlooked this pawn here. So he thought maybe queen takes e3, queen takes here. But really what happened is rook took here, and this queen was protecting this, obviously, because queen can't take on e3. So I took here, and unfortunately, he took this pawn, and then he immediately lost the game. So rook takes e3. It's definitely losing for him, but it's not completely lost. Yeah, I have a pretty huge advantage after. Oh, I even had rook b1, oh, queen b1 check, queen g7, b6. Those kind of ideas in this position as well. The idea is that I'm threatening to take on a7, or if he takes, I can take back with the a pawn, and all of a sudden my rook is here ready to attack his king over here, and my queen is ready to attack on these light squares, and his bishop is also pointing this way. That's a very powerful combination. But I chose a simpler thing, just grabbing a free pawn. Took here, and then he resigned. So yeah, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Pretty fun game. Good thing is no blunders from my side. Some inaccuracies, definitely, some mistakes. But overall, I feel like we played a pretty solid game, and hopefully you guys learned something from this experience, and I will see you guys in the next video. It is Rafi Chowdhury signing out from lichess.org.